We're just going over Blake Lively's complaint filed in the New York Times, and there are a few more things that I would like to discuss. I'm not getting into the smear campaign yet because I think it was done organically. Honestly, in my truth, I think it will be founded to have no truth and that it was done organically. And sadly for Blake, unfortunately, this was her biggest moment so far, and all of her past caught up to her. I don't think that it was done by Justin and his team. I honestly think the internet went wild and started resurfacing her past. And unfortunately, it came at her biggest moment, which often happens. People don't forget some of the nasty things you do. And as someone with a crazy, horrible past, that's going to come out. But all you can do is keep working. Let your work speak for itself. Keep going. You know, like the next one, the next one, the next one. And eventually your talent and your work will speak for itself. And hopefully some of that hate will dissipate. The good thing about this claim is that Miss Lively and her team have said that there were so many witnesses. I mean, they named a lot of people, not by name, but by crew and by job title. So it does seem like there's going to be, if this happened, there should be so many witnesses and there should be so much evidence. Now, I do really want to talk about wording here and why I think the New York Times did publish a biased complaint, because of course in Miss Lively's full complaint, she needs to prove that there is a case and there is a lawsuit. However, the wording is so important, and for the New York Times to publish this, the wording, it says, Mr. Baldoni inserted improvised gratuitous sexual contact and or scenes involving nudity into the film, including for an underage character in highly unsettling ways. For me, I know that that says an underage character, but people might take this as he did that to an underage woman. It's not very clear, and I mean, to say an underage character, but not confirm whether or not the participants were underage, I think is a little bit misleading. Again, I think the wording here might actually not work for Miss Lively in her own claim. It says, after Miss Lively signed on to the movie based on a draft of the script, Mr. Baldoni, without Miss Lively's knowledge or consent, personally added graphic content, including a scene in which Miss Lively was to orgasm on camera. It does say that she signed on to a draft of the script, and if you work on set, you know that every day you're getting, sometimes the script's changing. I mean, not drastically. Also, there is a claim that he added a scene where they finished together on their wedding night. Apparently that's already in the book, so she'll have to prove that this was completely out of context and that there was no place for it. And if he can prove that it's actually in the original story, as well as possibly in other drafts of the film, and that the writing team was on board with this, that might work against her because she did sign on to a draft of the film. Okay, so now this is where it kind of gets a little bit intense, and this is the whole day of the birthing scene. Miss Lively's character gives birth in the movie. It's actually the end scene of the film, and she had said there was no discussion of her being nude in it, and that Justin Baldoni was giving examples of women give birth naked, including his wife, who ripped off clothes during labor. He claimed it was not normal for women to remain in their hospital gowns while giving birth. Miss Lively disagreed, but felt forced into a compromise that she would be naked from below the chest down. You are giving birth. I feel like unless you, I don't know how you would just have like probably a cloth covering. And just knowing how the rest of the scene was shot with close-ups and stuff, I would assume that in this birthing scene, especially when you show like the newborn baby, that you wouldn't have pants on, but that you would be covered. So it'll be interesting to see what Mr. Baldoni says about this scene, whether or not that was just like at a production meeting where they were throwing around ideas, or if it was, yeah, that's just a really interesting point. It also says right under, this is juicy. When the birth scene was filmed, the set was chaotic, crowded, and utterly lacking in standard industry protections for filming nude scenes, such as choreographing the scene with an intimacy coordinator, having a signed nudity rider, or simply turning off the monitors so the scene was not broadcast to all crew on set and on their personal phones and iPad. Mr. Heath and Mr. Baldoni also failed to close the set, allowing non-essential crew to pass through while Miss Lively was mostly nude with her legs spread wide in stirrups and only a small piece of fabric covering her genitalia. Among the non-essential persons present that day, was Wayfarer co-chairman Mr. Sorowitz, who flew in for one of his few set visits. Miss Lively was not provided with anything to cover herself with between takes, and even after she had made multiple requests, Miss Lively became even more alarmed when Mr. Baldoni introduced his best friend to play the role of the OBGYN, when ordinarily a small role of that nature would be filled by a local actor. Miss Lively felt that the selection of Mr. Baldoni's friend for this intimacy role was the actor's face and hands were in close proximity to her nearly naked genitalia for birth scene was invasive and humiliating. Wow. Now, as a producer and an executive and someone who owns a filming company, hearing this complaint accusing the Wayfarer co-chairman who's funding the movie to come on set only because Blake Lively is giving birth, I think is going to hurt her for getting future work, because who will want to put themselves in her presence as a company owner to not even be able to be on their own set, as well as, I mean, Justin can easily counter this with the shooting schedule, with when his flight tickets were bought, as well as when he did cast his friend as the OBGYN. What I have a hard time believing is that Blake, Miss Lively, felt so inferior that she couldn't get a cover for her if she had asked, and that she laid there while all of this chaos was happening, and that she didn't ask to get covered and meant it. I think as someone who is very vocal and is very powerful and in her full self, to be able to go on set, take over getting the dailies, force yourself into the editing room, take over the wardrobe department, do all the music, and push everyone else out of the film, that you felt in this moment that you weren't able to ask for to be covered. During any nudity or intimate scenes or anything where you, even just in a bra, you do usually have someone waiting for you to give you your cover up. So that to me is alarming if it happened. But again, that will be easy to prove on Justin's part or disprove on Blake's part, because she said the scene was chaotic and lacking in standards and people were coming in and out. So who were those people? And yeah, when was this man cast? If it was just, that's a very interesting claim. And while we're just on the birthing scenes, there's a few more things that I would like to add and points that Miss Lively is making in her claim about Jamie Heath and the birthing scene.